you stay at a home like this? Let me know in the comments.
This is why you should never go to the bathroom during the middle of the night. In 1997, a 7-year-old boy and his younger brother had a habit of using the bathroom during the middle of the night. One day, the younger brother said that he was going to start using the bathroom before bed because the past few nights he'd seen a ghost wearing stripes in the middle of the hallway. The older brother told his mom about the ghost, but she claimed that the younger brother was simply trying to scare him. 11 years later, the older boy's mother asked him if he remembered the time that the cops came to the door, but he had no idea what she was talking about. The mother then explained, "You were too young for me to tell you, but one night I woke up and heard noises coming from outside my window. I looked to my left and saw a man staring into my window. She called the cops and described him as a thin white male wearing a striped shirt. Her description matched that of a murderer who had recently escaped from prison. The police reported that he had been living in the house for weeks."
Cursed games you should never play. Part 8. The Stairs Game. To play this game you will need a blindfold and a staircase. Now stand on the very bottom step and put your blindfold on. Now say the words, "It is from here whenceforth I shall commence." Go up the staircase and count every step you go up. Now do the same for going down. You're just basically getting your cardio in at this point. Eventually when you go down there will be more steps than usual. You'll start to sweat and you'll hear voices all around you. If this happens, you are officially in the underworld. Keep your blindfold on throughout this process, but soon you'll hear a deep voice asking for whatever you want. Once you answer him, you'll return to the real world. But at any point in this process, if you fall, you'll stay there forever.
After this video, you will believe in lake monsters.
Looking, is this something dangerous that needs to be marked?
Acapulco is a mythical creature, rumored to be living in Okanagan Lake in British Columbia. Dale Honchar was not searching for a mythological sea creature when he set sail on this immense body of water. However, him and his wife see something they cannot explain, but luckily they got it on camera.
And then it goes out from there.
And, it would have been that big. I thought if it was Ogopogo sleeping, I don't want to be here.
What seems to be a head of a huge creature can be seen. What do you think? Is this Ogopogo?
I just want to say that this animal would be legitimately terrifying if it lived near people. This right here. Leopard seals would legitimately rock our world in more ways than one. First of all, they're bigger than you think. They could be like 12 feet long and weigh a good 1,200 pounds. You could literally double me and I'd still come up short. Also, you want to hear a messed up joke? What does a leopard seal's favorite fast food spot and a cartoon sailor from the 30s have in common? Popeye. Like, you're really not going to tell me this isn't some prehistoric rubber land shark or a paraplegic velociraptor. Like, we're lucky they're only the op of Happy Feet and rarely attack people. But the one time a leopard seal did catch a body was when it grabbed a researcher, dragged her underwater, and proceeded to maul her for 6 minutes straight until she drowned. Also, I said they don't live near people, but some of them have been airdropping to Australia because Australia has a magnet for Jurassic bullshit. On a lighter note, a leopard seal adopted a photographer and spent a week trying to feed him soul-evacuated penguins because he assumed he couldn't do it for himself. That's probably the most wholesome story you're gonna get out of them.
What is happening to this TikToker?
Something scratching at my door. I originally thought it was my dog. My dog is right here.
TikTok has all kinds of videos that allegedly show real paranormal activity. Sometimes it is a hoax, but some clips are a bit more difficult to explain. TikToker Wade Lanigan has one of the more mysterious stories out there. He claims that something unexplainable is happening in his house, and it all started with a mysterious picture he found on his phone.
Anyways, here's the photo. I made sure to screenshot it so you can see what time it was taken. It's at 2:34 in the morning. As you can see, there's no way that my daughter could have taken it.
Apparently, someone or something took his phone and took a picture of Wade while he was sleeping. It soon escalates from there. He hears knocks, weird sounds, scratching, and objects even move on its own.
It was something scratching at my door. I originally thought it was my dog. My dog is right here.
The activity becomes so bad that he eventually decides to flee the house. He grabs his daughter and dog and flees to the house of a friend. It is even possible to hear a whisper at the end of the video.
Daisy, come on. Come on.
It says, "Don't come back." So do you know what is tormenting this family? Can you tell us?
These are the most haunted places in Pakistan. Starting at number 4, Shah Allah Dita Caves in Islamabad. This famous tourist spot in Islamabad is advised to only be visited at daytime. In Islam, caves are known to be homes for jinns. Visitors have reported hearing shrill noises from within these caves, and the locals don't usually go anywhere near them. Number 3, Sheikhapura Fort in Lahore. Sheikhapura Fort is a historical fort located in the district of Lahore. The fort is currently in awful shape, and no one is willing to restore the site. But anyone who dares to go near the fort returns with fear and horror. It is said that the last queen that resided in the fort died there, and it has since been haunted. Number 2, Mohatta Palace in Karachi. This palace is ranked as the most haunted historical landmark in Pakistan. Today, this palace serves as a museum. The guards and the workers in this palace have experienced dreadful activities. They would see artifacts moving from their place. They would hear noises of people having a party inside. And they would be physically touched by unseen beings. Let alone, the staff always warn visitors not to come alone if they want to avoid an unwanted encounter. And finally, number 1, Karsaz Road in Karachi. The Bride of Karsaz is a horrific tale about a newlywed couple that died in a car crash on Karsaz Road. Since then, there have been several sightings of a bride dressed in red that lingers around the road. But it gets even more sinister. Several people have reported that a bride stands on the side of the road at night, signaling late-night travelers for help. Once they stop, the bride's face turns into something unearthly, almost like a decomposing body, and she chases them down. Eyewitnesses say that they were chased by the bride, with her running as fast as their cars. It's safe to say that Karsaz Road isn't the most welcoming place in Pakistan. You tell me, what country should I do next?
Scary Places in the Netherlands. Part 8. Around 1400, rather lurid practices took place on the gallows field Volwijk, near the Tolhuis in Amsterdam-Noord. Criminals sentenced to death were publicly hanged. The location for the gallows field was not chosen at random. It was strategically located in a busy spot with many boats passing by. It served as a warning to those who visited Amsterdam. Amsterdam had a no-mercy policy for criminals. The necessary theatrical elements were added to the executions. The criminals were displayed with the object with which they had committed their crime. At least 1,000 criminals found their final resting place on the gallows on Volwijk, after a shell laboratory had settled on the banks of the IJ. In nowadays, many new apartments have been built here. Yet the field remains empty, as if we still don't want to live where they hung on the gallows.
Clinkety clink. This is one of the best stories from Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, and it goes like this. There was an elderly woman who got sick and died. She didn't have any family, so her neighbors took care of her corpse. When the old woman died, her eyes were wide open, looking at everything, yet seeing nothing. Her neighbors found 2 silver coins in her house, so they took them and put one over each of her eyes. The next day, the gravedigger came to take her body down to the graveyard. He was about to close the lid to her casket when he noticed the silver coins. He couldn't resist, and he plucked them straight off of her eyes and put them in his pocket. He looked down at the woman before he closed the lid and saw her staring up at him, her eyes wide open, looking at everything yet seeing nothing. He took the old woman down to the graveyard and buried her there. That night, he went home and took the coins out of his pocket and put them on the nightstand next to his bed. He was just about to fall asleep when he heard the coins rattling on the nightstand, going clinkety clink, clinkety clink. Part 2 is on my page. The gravedigger thought, oh, it's probably just the wind, I'll just ignore it. So he tried to go back to bed, but then he heard the coins rattling, going clinkety clink, clinkety clink. And then he thought he heard something else in the distance, coming from down the road towards the cemetery. It was the voice of an old woman, and she was saying, "Give me back my coins." And the coins went clinkety clink, clinkety clink. The wind was so strong, making the coins rattle like that, so he got up and he closed his door, thinking that that would stop the coins from rattling so he could finally get some sleep. And that's when he heard the voice again, but this time it was closer, right outside his house. It was an elderly voice saying, "Who has my money?" And another gust of wind came out of nowhere, and it rattled the coins, going clinkety clink, clinkety clink. This time he heard the voice coming from in his house. He just sat in his bed, frozen in fear, and with a large gust of wind, his bedroom door flew open, and he saw the corpse of the old woman standing there asking for her coin.
So I found something on the internet that most people have not seen. This is the only known photo of Cherie Glenn. This is a leaked booking photo. It's from like back in the 80s when she was one of the most famous cannibals in the US before she was caught by police. The reason the photo was leaked is because at the time, her appearance was considered so disturbing for most people that it was decided that they would conceal her booking photo as well as her interrogation footage. Even the nature of her crimes is not public information that was also sealed in the affidavit, as it was described as highly grotesque and complex. Even today, there's not much public information that's known about where she's being held, and that leaked photo is the only image that has ever been seen of one of America's most terrifying women.
It is a shrine for a haunted Barbie doll in Singapore. It is located in Pulau Ubin, otherwise known as Granite Island in Malay. The island used to have a population in thousands, but today there aren't even 40 people living there. What remains is the spirit of a German girl. There lived 2 German families in Pulau Ubin. 1914, the British started to detain the Germans because they were considered the enemies of the crown. A military force was then sent to Pulau Ubin and the Germans were detained at Tanglin Barracks. The young daughter of one of the families ran away into the woods and disappeared. Days went by without finding her body. She was eventually found by Boyonese plantation workers, but she was covered in ants. They concluded that she died by falling off a cliff near a quarry. The workers then buried her in sand and laid flowers while chanting prayers. She was then reburied by Chinese workers on top of the quarry. Whatever happened to the family is still a mystery, but there are reported sightings of the ghost of the girl by the villagers. A quarry company then built a permanent shrine for the girl, and it was known for good luck. Offerings were given such as makeup, perfume, and nail polish. 2017, an Australian tourist started to have dreams about the girl. She then directed him to a stall with Barbie dolls. He bought the Barbie doll and came to Singapore to place it at the altar. Now the Barbie doll is said to be holding the soul of the girl and became an important part of the altar. This is the final look.
Let's talk about another horrifying home invasion horror game, Danny's House. Check my bio for a full playthrough. In Danny's House, you're dog sitting for a friend during the night of a storm. Everything seems to be normal while you're cleaning up for your friend, but all of a sudden an alert starts going off on the TV. A serial killer named Danny has gotten loose and you need to take shelter now. Hearing this news, you decide to let your friend's dog Ginger out real quick. And while she's out, you might as well do the rest of the dishes. And we might as well reset the breaker box because the storm knocked the power out. Time to let Ginger back in. But when you get to the back door, you realize something. You left the door open the whole time. Danny is in your home.
You wanted to know more about Cherie Glenn, and I found you more. This was the leaked booking photo of Cherie Glenn, one of America's most infamous cannibals from the 80s. So much of her story and these case records had been sealed from the public because it was deemed too disturbing to print. Even this booking photo, it was sealed. This is a leak. They did have somebody submit another leaked photo of this photo. It's just from a closer angle. Like I said, there's not really much that's publicly known because so much of her case was actually sealed. The rumors of the story was that the case was so bizarre and so horrific in the cannibalistic practices that it was difficult at the time to find a jury that could stand it. Descriptions of not only her consuming victims, but forcing victims to consume parts of her. Somebody also reached out and tracked down what they think might be a yearbook photo of her from the 70s. By no means is it 100% confirmed, but it does look really similar to her. It's 100% in the eyes.
The urban legend of Death Crash.
According to legend, in the 1930s there was a terrible accident on Brebaker Bridge. 5 cars crashed into each other on the bridge, and all the people in the vehicles were killed on impact. Because the cars crashed in such a remote area, nobody saw it happen and it remained undiscovered for a whole day. Eventually, after nightfall, a neighboring farmer was driving his tractor down the road and discovered the crash. He immediately alerted the police. When the ambulance came, the workers found a total of 12 dead bodies in the wreck. The bodies were all put into ambulances and brought back to a local funeral home where they were all identified and given proper burials. After such a tragic accident, the town was eager to try and put the death crash behind them. However, shortly after the accident, the farmer who originally discovered the bodies claimed that every time he crossed Brebaker Bridge, his tractor would suddenly stop for no reason. Then he would hear 13 loud knocks, followed by a strange gurgling and hissing sound. Other locals told the same story. They said they would be driving down the road, and their cars would suddenly stall as they were crossing Brebaker Bridge. This was always followed by someone or something knocking 13 times on the car. And then, right before the car started up again, gurgling and a hissing noise was heard. The farmer began to wonder if the ambulance workers had really recovered all the victims of the death crash. He searched the area around the bridge and eventually wandered into the woods by the side of the road. What he found there chilled him to his very soul. Sitting propped up against a tree, covered in snow, was the dead body of a man. He was frozen stiff. His arms had been eaten away by black bears, leaving only bloody stumps. His mouth was hanging open and his tongue was missing. The farmer had found the 13th victim of the crash. The man had been thrown out of the car in the accident and wound up lying injured by the side of the road. He had been dragged into the woods by black bears who devoured his arms in time. The ambulance sirens scared off the black bears, and the man was still alive when the ambulance workers were taking the dead bodies out of the cars. He had been trying to call for help, but his arms and tongue were gone, so nobody could hear him. To date, locals still believe that the ghost of the 13th victim still haunts Brebaker Bridge, stopping any car that dares to cross his path. The ghost beats on the side of the car with the bloody stumps that were once his arms and then tries to call for help. But all that comes out are hisses and gurgles because he doesn't have a tongue.
These are sad photos taken right before death. In this photo, you can see two brothers happily eating dinner together. However, the brother that you see on the left side of this picture sadly took his life a few weeks after this photo was taken. A kid searched up his house on Google Earth after his mother passed away, and it was a photo of her standing in front of the house. In this photo, you can see two friends who look to be having a great time with each other. But 2 weeks after this photo was taken, the person you see on the left side of this photo was mugged and knifed to death. This photo was taken of two sisters at the beach after their 3-month trip around Morocco. But unfortunately, the two sisters ended up dying a day later in a car accident. In this photo, you can see a group of people on their way to a wedding. The man sitting on the far left side arrived at the wedding, got an Uber ride home, and had a random brain bleed that couldn't be operated and sadly passed away.
If you see him while you're awake, run. So this story actually comes from a Reddit user who's a therapist. And this user had a patient who was coming in complaining of seeing Hatman at night. This patient would apparently wake up in the middle of the night to see Hatman standing at the foot of their bed, watching them sleep. And as a result, they were not really sleeping much. So the therapist prescribed some pretty heavy sleeping medication, and as a result, the patient starts getting a little better. But then one day, the patient comes in and just looks like they had seen a ghost. So the therapist asked them what was wrong, and they said that as they were getting in the car to come to therapy, they saw Hatman standing across the street during the day. This therapist had only ever heard of Hatman when it came to patients waking up in the middle of the night and seeing him, never when they were already awake doing things in the middle of the day. So the patient is terrified, but the therapist thinks this might be a side effect of the medication. It takes a little while to get used to. But that was the last time the patient ever came to see the therapist.
Blood-curdling facts that you wish you never knew. Part 12. When a person is electrocuted via electric chair, they feel absolutely everything. They're completely aware of their body being deep fried in real time. And one person who survived the first round of electrocution said it tasted like cold peanut butter. As you're watching this video, your internal organs are constantly moving around inside you. Your armpit is where most of your important nerves in your arms are, so if you stab it, it will leave your arm completely useless. Ted Bundy, the serial killer, used to work at a suicide hotline. Scaphism was a form of ancient torture where someone's body was tied between two boats and they were covered in milk and honey, and bugs and other animals would feast on their body for days. Cotard's delusion is a rare condition where people literally think they're dead, and many of them ask to be taken to a cemetery to be with other dead people.
Could this be a gateway to another world? Tales of haunted places and mysterious phenomenon have always intrigued us. Have you heard about the Kiyotaki Tunnel in Kyoto, Japan? It's known to be one of the most haunted spots in all of Japan. This tunnel was built by slaves during the 1920s, and it's said that those who drive through it can hear women screaming from a nearby forest and experience certain fatigue, headaches, and nausea.
Alright guys, let's talk about the man from Taured. In 1954, the man from Taured arrived in Tokyo Airport in Japan. However, his passport was weird. It said United Kingdom of Taured, and this does not exist. After seeing the passport, officials think it's a fake, so they detain him. He points on the map where it should be, and it's Andorra. He's confused, and now the officials are also confused. He claims Taured has been around for over 1,000 years. The officials check his passport, it's genuine, it has stamps from multiple countries on it as well. On his passport, it even said Taured citizen. He had a lot of documentation, European currencies, all that stuff. Officials took a lot of his documentation to investigate and put him in a hotel room to figure out what's going on here. They even had guards guarding the door. The next morning, the man from Taured was completely gone, and the documents the officials had were also gone. A lot of people speculate he's from a parallel universe and somehow managed to end up here. Others speculate this is just a case of fraud. Whatever it may be, it's very creepy. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section.